Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have you on an episode of Right Off Track, where we have another amazing guest join us to tell her story. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Jennifer Lay, who's not only a trailblazer, but also a manifestation success coach and the founder of Manifestement. Manifestement is a go-to platform, podcast, and community that empowers people from around the world to design and manifest a life they absolutely love. Through her powerful coaching and the Manifestement platform, Jennifer has helped countless individuals tap into their inner potential and transform their lives. With her expertise in manifestation, she guides others to unlock the power of their minds, embracing spirituality and harnessing the laws of attraction to consciously create a life of fulfillment, purpose, and abundance. But Jennifer's impact expands far beyond coaching and mentoring. She's a dedicated mother, a prominent advocate for gender equality in the tech industry, and the recipient of prestigious titles, including Miss World 2019. Amazing. Through her nonprofit organization, Female for Tech, she actively works towards closing the gender gap by providing students with invaluable financial assistance through scholarships and grants. On today's episode, we have the privilege of delving into Jennifer's wisdom, insights, and thoughts on being a mompreneur. She will also share her profound understanding of mindset, spirituality, law of attraction, and its transformative power of manifestation. Her story is a beacon of hope and empowerment, reminding us that we have the ability to consciously create a life filled with peace, purpose, and prosperity. So get ready to be inspired as we delve into Jennifer's incredible journey and discover the wisdom she has to offer. Stay tuned for an enlightened conversation that will leave you feeling motivated and ready to embrace your unique path. Welcome to the podcast, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. It has been a long time since we worked together. I think it was 2017, and so much has changed. We're both boy moms, both ventured off track. So thank you so much for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. And so much has happened in your life, as you mentioned. Could you share a little bit with the audience? Because I've seen you from Facebook and then you've undergone this amazing journey to where you are today. Could you give our audience a little bit of context where you are now and the little backstory behind it?
Yeah. So after Facebook, I decided to take some time off because my dad wasn't doing very well. And there were just things going on in my personal life that I decided, let me step away. And so I took some time off. And during that time, I decided to get back into pageantry. It's something that I've been passionate about since I was 17. And I had a friend tell me about this pageant for married women, Mrs. World. I had no idea. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Let me go ahead and give it a try. And I felt like at that time, it was really perfect timing because I'm sure you can relate to this, but being a mom, it can, as beautiful as it is and uh, as joyous as it can be, there can be times where you feel like you don't have a sense of self. At least for me, that's what I felt like. I felt like I wanted to do something for myself. And so I felt like that pageantry opportunity was a good opportunity for me to go and do something for myself. And so I was very fortunate to win that title that year. I was able to travel around the world and give back to the community, promote my nonprofit, which I think we'll get into a little bit later. After that year, I went to Apple, and we can get more into this, but I eventually resigned because I wanted to start my own business. And so now I am fully resigned. I am fully focused on my business as a life coach, and I love it. So we'll get more into the details, I'm sure, but that's kind of high level where I'm at
Oh,
now.
oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm sure for some people that seems even just crazy out of this world to go for such a pageant. Like it seems like a grand achievement and unreachable, right? So how do you start by, not even knowing about this and then deciding to go into it and then winning? Like what was that process even mentally? What were the challenges along the way that you had to conquer?
That's a really good question. So when I was presented with this opportunity, I was very afraid because it had been so long. I think the last pageant I won was when I was 17. And I was afraid because it had been a long time. I didn't know if I'd be able to juggle everything. And I think it was also just the fear of failing. Um, yeah, I think I had to work through a lot of those things. I had to talk myself through why those were irrational fears. And so, yeah, I think it was recognizing that internal talk and thinking more empowering thoughts, essentially.
Absolutely. And I'm curious also, how do you go from just starting nothing? Maybe it's just maybe something that we can all apply to other big goals, excuse me. Like, how do you start from the very beginning and reach such a grand goal? Was there any kind of learning that you have around that process that maybe you can share and adapt to other areas?
Yeah. So I think because I had competed before, I knew what to expect. So for me, I like to have a plan. I I would say I'm a very detailed person, very detail oriented. And so I kind of have a project plan for everything in my life. And so that keeps me on track. I think it's also getting clear on why I want to do it, because whatever goal it is, there are going to be challenges. And so you need to be able to remind yourself why you're doing it in the first place. I think that helps a lot. And then just taking it one day at a time. I like having a project plan because I like to see the progress that I'm making. I think outside of those tactical things, I just have a lot of faith that I'm not doing it alone. I have faith in a higher power guiding me. And so that takes off a lot of pressure, whatever it is that I want to pursue in life. I think that if you believe that it's all up to you, it can just create a lot of stress. It can create a lot of anxiety and fear. And so I think that to overcome fear in a lot of cases, it's choosing faith instead, and knowing that you will be guided on your path.
Absolutely. And we touched a little bit about manifestment in the intro, and you are leading up to that right now. I'm curious, can you let us know, how did you find that purpose within yourself, right? And here you are, you're Meta, then you're reaching the pageant, then you're back at Apple. How did you find your purpose throughout that journey?
Yeah, so I have always been very interested in personal development. I think that I have always tried to have a positive mindset. And it's really interesting because you know how on Facebook they give you those memories like 5 years ago you posted this, or 10 years ago, and there was one that popped up. I can't remember exactly what the quote was, but it just put a smile on my face. I felt really proud of my younger self because I was trying to stay positive during a negative situation. And so I said, you know what? Let me just go back on my Facebook just for fun. I wanted to go back on my timeline and see the things that I posted before. And I saw so many quotes when I was 17, when I was 18, motivational quotes. And it's also funny because my friend, one of my best friends, she calls me a walking quote junkie. I I love quotes. I feel like it's a glimpse into someone else's mind, like what they think and how they think. And I think there's so much value and wisdom that you can get from other people. And so anyway, I've always been very big on personal development, but it was during my divorce several years ago when I just became very obsessed with personal development because it was a pretty low point in my life, and clearly it was not working. Like what I was doing wasn't working. And so I was very uh, open to learning new things. I also had this insatiable curiosity to learn more about life, to learn more about us as humans, like what motivates us, why are certain people successful. And I think that for me, I had seen some successes. And what I mean by that is like I had a goal that I was able to accomplish. And it made me reflect on those moments of what what helped me be successful in those moments versus other times when I wasn't able to be successful, such as my marriage. And so, yeah, it was a very reflective period in my life. And as I was going on this journey, I went off social media. I mean, I still posted those private stories for my friends. I didn't go off completely, but I just was very conscious of what I was consuming because I wanted to make sure that I was feeding myself good information and positive information. Um, and also during that time, it was it was just a lot of learning, a lot of integration, applying what I was learning, and I saw a difference in my life. I wouldn't say it was like a drastic 180, but I started to see improvements, and that motivated me to keep going. I think it's similar to when people go to the gym and they see results and they're like, oh, okay, this works. Let me keep going, right? Like, I know you can absolutely relate to that. And so that's what I did. I kept learning, I kept applying these principles. And at some point, I was thinking, why do they not teach this in school? Like, why am I now just learning this? And I said, what wouldn't it be amazing if I could share this information? What if I could teach it in my own way? And also, a lot of the authors, a lot of the teachers, they that I was learning from, they are in their 70s, 80s. A lot of people are no longer here. And I was just thinking, oh, it'd be so amazing if I could reach a younger generation, if I could take this information and just present it in my own unique way with my own perspective and sharing my own experiences. And so it became clear to me that this is what I wanted to do. And I think it felt so aligned because I've always enjoyed mentoring and teaching and coaching. That was my favorite aspect of being a recruiter, was helping candidates. And so it just kind of slowly became clear. It wasn't one day I'm like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. It was more like a gradual thing.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you because I know when I thought about creating a podcast, you were one of those people that inspired me, right? I remember seeing you post about on Facebook, and I was, that makes perfect sense, right? Who like, what a great example of a person who lives their life fully, who embraces learning, who has this value to add and share with other people in a very authentic, caring way. And I see that in your podcast and the social media things you share, like you are authentic. And also to add your comment about being very detail oriented, you are absolutely. Jennifer shared with me her quick tips on how to create a podcast. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm taking like a million notes on her brilliance. And I was also like, my mind's blown a little bit, so organized, incredible. But beyond that, you were just the person like, yes, let me share this with you. So I appreciate you being that person for people that know you, people that don't know you and are getting your knowledge. Like that's such a wonderful treasure trove. And I like that you commented about the age of people because like you're taking those ancient, not to say the people are ancient, but wisdom that transpires different
Yeah.
ages, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And sharing it in a way that I think will be relatable to others. Do you mind we dive into the podcast a little bit and share like what has that journey been like for you and maybe some highlights of what you're sharing right now and what other people can learn from that podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So on my podcast, it's called the Manifestment Podcast. The topics I cover, mindset, spirituality, law of attraction, manifestation. And really, my intention is to help people create a life that they love, a life that feels good, a life where they're living up to their potential. And my hope is that the listeners have some sort of aha moment when they're listening to my episodes. I think that these aha moments are so important because if I think back on my journey, it was those moments that really shifted a lot for me. It made me reflect on my life, and I was able to see whether it be the situation that I'm in or just life in general through a different perspective. And I think that when you have an aha moment, it inspires you and motivates you to keep going. So, similar to the analogy I said before about going to the gym and seeing results, it makes you want to keep going, right? And so, the same thing is when you have these aha moments, it makes you want to keep learning. And so that's what I hope that my podcast can be for other people. And I think outside of that, I want people to feel good when they're listening to my podcast. Some people have reached out to me to say that it's something that they look forward to every week. And that just means so much to me. I think that in this day and age where there's so much content and there's so many creators, for someone to say that they look forward to your content, that's such a big compliment. And so, yeah, that's my intention, my hope. And then I think that the reason why I decided to do podcasts is because it allows me to go deep with people. I think short format is great. I think short format content is fun. And, I think it serves a purpose, but I think with podcasts, it allows you to dive deeper. And I think that in order to see a transformation, you need to be able to invest the time and energy to go deep on these topics. And so that's what I'm enjoying most right now about the podcast, is being able to um, just share more on things that I care about.
I love that. And one thing you talked about that resonated with me was about embracing these valuable skills that we don't learn at school, but have a lot of value. And one thing that I'm learning throughout life, but also through going through experience of like this, there has to be another way, right? There can't be just a life where you're working towards a burnout, where it's all about like some monetary goal because we should want that. And to me, that has led to redefining what success is. Like to me, it's about a journey that I feel like I'm learning on, I'm helping others. And day to day, I feel like I'm actually living. I'm not just waiting to live when I achieve a goal. Um, I'm curious, like, have there been any misconceptions that you are challenging with your work? I think that a lot of people might be like, well, manifestment, that seems very fluffy. And I mean that just like from an outside perspective, because I do value it a lot. Like, have there been any misconceptions that you're helping um, disinstill, and how do you go about it? And have there been any kind of response like, oh yeah, that aha moment where they discover something
Yeah.
new in this?
I'm glad that you brought that up. There's definitely a lot of misconceptions when it comes to manifestation, particularly that you just think about something and it just shows up like it's magic. I mean, I do think that there's some magic to it, but I think that it's also taking action. And when I came up with this word manifestment, I was thinking about how I wanted to kind of dispel that misconception, or at least like represent this blend of spirituality and strategy. And so if you think about the word manifestation and then you think about the word accomplishment or achievement, where it implies action, like the MENT, I took that and I stuck it with manifest. So you get manifestment. And it's really, the way that I define it is a manifestation from dreaming and doing. It's having the right mindset that ultimately influences you to take action. And at the same time, having faith that you're also guided and you're co-creating. You're only responsible for part of it. You're not responsible for all of it. And so that's what I'll say about the misconception around manifestation. I'm sorry, was there another question that I missed?
No, no, that's great. I was curious, have there been any aha moments that you've seen where people maybe had a misconception when they first came to your work, let's say, and then like, oh, actually, this is so much more than I thought it was?
Mm. So when I decided to start my podcast, I was thinking, who am I speaking to? Am I speaking to someone who doesn't know anything about manifestation and I'm introducing them to it and I'm teaching from point A? Or am I wanting to speak to people who are already familiar with it, have a level of belief around it, and just help them to go deeper? And I feel like I obviously want to help everyone, but I think you have to be a little bit, you kind of have to niche down a little bit, or, that saying, if you try to speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And so I said, I really like speaking and coaching people who already are on this journey. And it's not so much me trying to convince them. It's more so just helping them through maybe their mental blocks and helping them to see things through different perspectives. And so with that said, I think that I I haven't I'm not really on a mission to convince people otherwise, or I'm not trying to convince them of what they should believe. Uh, I think ultimately in life, it's not what's right or what's wrong. It's what resonates. And if this information resonates, if you're into spirituality, awesome. But if you don't, that's okay too. I think whatever works for you. There's a lot of things in life that we'll never be able to know what is the truth, right? And so it's more important to figure out, well, what's working for me. I think the people who maybe are skeptical, one thing that I have said is, if you're not happy with where you are in life right now, if you're not satisfied with where you're at, this is a question that I have for you. If you try these principles, if you apply this, see it as an experiment for, I don't know, a couple months or a year. What is the worst thing that will happen? It doesn't work. Okay. But what's the best case scenario? What is the potential upside that you get to create a life that you love, that you have an amazing career, that you have, a love that feels very genuine, and all these amazing things that people want to have or to experience, right? So if that is the potential upside, is it worth the try? And I think with that perspective, a lot of people have tried and they find that it was worth it, because they realize that they are able to be in control of their life, and that life is not just uh predestined, or they don't have to play this victim anymore. They can actually be in control. They have the ability to choose and create the life that they want. So that's what I'll say about that.
I love that. And if it's okay, and you don't have to share everything, whatever is kind of to be gained from listening to you on the podcast, but could you give us a little bit of the framework that you do feel comfortable sharing so people in this audience can get a little taste and dive more into it?
Yeah, so the 3-step framework that I teach in my program, it's based on all the things that I read from different people. So the thing is, when you're on this journey, there are so many different perspectives. There are so many different authors who present really the same information in a different way, right? And so for me, I am someone that really likes to conceptualize things and create some sort of framework so that it's easy for me to understand. And so based on everything that I learned, I said, okay, well, this framework makes sense to me and it incorporates what all these people are saying. And so the framework, it's a 3-step process. It's believe, ask, attract. Believe starts with your mindset. It's making sure that you have empowering beliefs that align with what you want. So an example that I often share is there can be someone that wants to have financial abundance in their life. They want to be wealthy, but at the same time, they've grew up thinking that money is bad. Money is the root of all evil. It's bad to have more money, more problems. If you believe that, if you believe that on a conscious and subconscious level, your mind is not going to work to bring you financial abundance because it's trying to keep you safe. It says, well, if it's bad, well, let's just make sure that we don't we don't get any more money in our lives, And so I think that it's making sure that you have the right beliefs. And part of this first step is also having belief in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to take action. I think it's also having faith, as I mentioned earlier, having faith that you're not doing it alone. And so once you have the right belief system, then it's now step 2, which is you get clear on what you want. And I see a lot of people in this space where they don't do that inner work and they just go straight to asking, I want to manifest this. And the thing is, what they're trying to manifest is actually probably not what they really want, right? When part of the beliefs too is peeling back the layers to get to know who you really are, so that you're asking from a genuine place of what you actually want, not what you think people think you should want, or what your family wants for you, or whatever it is. So getting clear on what you want and deciding that, declaring it, I think all of those things are really important. And then the final step is attract. So you attract it through both, it's attraction and action. You do take the action, but it's also being in harmony with what you want and attracting the right people, the right things into your life to help you ultimately achieve what you want.
So in what I want to repeat just resonated with me a lot is the importance of creating space for reflection, if that sounds
Mm-hmm.
right, on every part of the process, because again, oftentimes we think we want something, but it's not really serving us. Or to
Right.
your point, we might want something and maybe it will serve us, but we have these security
Mm-hmm.
issues, not issues, blankets, emotions, guards that are trying to protect us, not because they want to harm us, because again, they think that they're keeping us safe, keeping these beliefs. So I think right now there's such a fast-paced society, and we even kind of embrace like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm busier, and I'm busy. But it really takes that reflection, that ability to slow down, to
Yeah.
make space to understand, what do I really like? What am I hustling for?
Hmm.
Like,
It's that awareness. Awareness is key for sure. I think the busy thing or being productive, that was me for so long, and I totally burnt out. But as you go on your journey and you start to become more aware, why do I want that? Why am I doing this? I think the most important and most powerful question you can ask yourself is why? Why did I just think that? Why did I just get triggered by that? Why am I upset right now? It can reveal so much to you, and you're able to then start that work. But yeah, the being productive all the time is something that I think a lot of us struggle with. One quote that I really like is measure your days not by how productive you were, but how present you were. So I try to stay grounded and not, overwork. I think you could probably relate to this too, is where even if you love what you do, you can still overwork. And you're actually prone to overworking when you love what you do because you can do it all day, right? And so, yeah, that's definitely something that I've consciously worked on over the years is just being more present and not always having to do something or be productive.
absolutely. And if you don't mind, I feel like that ties into the mompreneur life. At least I feel like kids force you to slow down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's a poopy diaper and you're just working like, oh no, I have to slow down, or they don't take weight as an ass. They're like, no, I need it right now. Um, but can you tell me a little bit, how have you found like this mompreneur journey to be? Like, what have been some of the challenges, maybe some of the learnings that helped you do all of this and thrive and balance your family life?
Yeah, so I think tactically, I will start there is I like to put things on my calendar. I like to time block. I used to think that I was such a great multitasker. That was false. There's no such thing as multitasking. You're really just shifting your energy and focus from one thing to the next. And you're so much better off just zoning in and focusing on one thing. And so time blocking and having days where I'm dedicated, where I dedicate one day to one thing or like one specific activity. That helps a lot in terms of just being more efficient with my time. And so if you can find ways to be more efficient, you're able to buy back time. So time blocking is helpful. And then I think like tools like Zapier, where you can automate tasks, also very helpful. Outside of like the more tactical things of just what can help you to be more efficient, I think from a mindset perspective, I've learned to give myself more grace and to evaluate and manage my expectations. So, as an example, I used to be so stressed out because the home was messy all the time. I am someone that appreciates a clean, tidy space. I want things to be put back where they belong. And when you have a 9-year-old who is very, very creative, who really loves paper crafts, the house is always messy. And so that used to bother me, or it would stress me out because I had to clean all the time. But now I'm actually pretty proud of myself that I can walk past a mess and feel okay, and it doesn't bother me. So instead of thinking, oh my God, the home is a mess again, I say, I'm so grateful that Ethan has a space where he can be creative. I'm so grateful that he has the space to explore his imagination. And that just instantly shifts how I feel. And I go on about my day. And, we still clean up, but I'm not obsessive about it, right? So I think it's what are your expectations? How can you manage that? There's this meme that I saw a long time ago, and it's either me, the kids, or the house. Like we can't all look good at the same time. And it's just funny, right? It's funny. It's tongue in cheek. It's funny because it's true. Like you have to set your expectations and have healthy expectations of what balance looks like. So I used to feel a lot of mom guilt if I wasn't spending all my time with my son. If I was working, whether it would be in corporate or on my business, I would feel that mom guilt. And it's really interesting because when I was younger, my parents never played with me and my brothers because they were busy. They were in survival mode. They needed to hustle. And so they didn't have all this extra time to sit and play with us, right? But now I feel so bad if I'm not doing that. And I have to remind myself, look, mom never played with you and you turned out okay. That's not to say that I'm not going to spend time with my son, but it's again setting the right expectations. And I also have learned that it's quality over quantity. Would you rather spend 3 hours with someone and they're on their phone and they're doing a bunch of different things? Or would you rather have someone who spends 1 hour with you and they give you their full undivided attention? And so I think it's a matter of focusing on quality instead of quantity. That has helped me so much. I think also what has helped in terms of balance is asking and accepting help. I used to not ask for help or be comfortable asking for help because I never wanted to be a burden. I don't ever want to burden other people. But what helped me to again shift my perspective around this is I love helping people. When people come to me for help, or if they have questions, if I can help in any way, I feel so fulfilled. It makes me feel so happy. And I just had this realization one day where yeah, I thought if I don't accept help, I'm depriving other people of what that feels like to help. And so now I graciously accept help. Um, and also, I think just from a spirituality perspective, when you help other people, you're creating karma for yourself, good karma. And so if someone wants to help you, allow them to create that good karma for themselves. A lot of people don't know that they're doing that consciously, but accept that help and be okay, be comfortable accepting help. Obviously, this doesn't mean like accept like asking for help all the time and being a burden, but every now and then it's okay. Like now my mother-in-law, she makes us food. That makes such a big difference. Just the little things, it can really help you to live a more balanced life. I think that is key. The other thing I would say is having a morning routine has helped me a lot. I used to wake up, I used to skip breakfast, I used to just get on my laptop and start, replying to the emails. And I didn't even realize how that would put me in a state of stress first thing in the morning. And it would just affect the rest of my day because now I'm not in the best mood. And so over the last several years, I have been very intentional about having quiet time in the morning. I will journal, I'll make my gratitude list. I will just sit in my office, even if I'm not doing anything, and just zone out. Sometimes I'll meditate, sometimes I'll just sit there and do nothing. And that is such an important part of my day to center myself, to ground myself. And it really sets the tone for the rest of the day. So having a routine, I think, is really helpful. So yeah, I would say those are some of the things that have helped me live a more balanced life.
Amazing. I hope people were writing this down. If you didn't, you replay the podcast, write this down, incorporate in your life, and adjust, right? Not everything will apply to you, but I think a lot of that resonates with me. If you don't mind, I'll go back to the mom part. And I really feel like there's so much judgment that goes for
Mm.
moms, and
Mm-hmm.
you're never on the right side, right? You're like, you're working too much, or you're not working enough, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You're not putting your child into 7 after school activities and not helping the family. All that is BS. Like,
Mm-hmm.
being a mom and a parent in
100.
general is hard, right? You're doing your best, and we're all trying. And I think that as long as we are trying our best and living our full life, like, that is the best way to show up to our children, because they get to see an example of an adult going after something, being fulfilled, and that energy, to your point, that exchange of energy comes back into their life. All right.
Yes.
So you can
Yes.
be more fulfilled and happy, because you can maybe spend more time. But if you're stressed, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling unfulfilled, that is how your child sees you. And that they
Mm-hmm.
normalize that state, right? They normalize, like, that's what's going to maybe be them. Right. So we all try to be our best, whether it's working or not working, being an entrepreneur, whatever. We're all trying to set a good example. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's such a under discussed topic, but so important, and we need to give each other grace.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that. I think a lot of people need to hear that.
So if you're your mom and parent, you're doing great, whatever
You're
you're
doing great.
doing.
Yes.
And if you don't mind, also going back to the topic of entrepreneurship and kind of going through your own track, when I connected with you a little bit ago about this whole journey, you mentioned to me like how many amazing things have happened through you undertaking this path. Like, maybe not even, I don't know how much you knew was going to happen, if you were planning it, but could you talk a little about that? Like, what has been your manifestation? Like, what did you
Mm,
expect to happen? How has it unfolded, and what amazing stuff has happened since you decided to go through this journey?
yeah. So even before I stepped into being an entrepreneur and starting my own business, I wanted to manifest a career that was fulfilling. I wanted a career where I would wake up in the morning and be excited about my work. You know, that cliche saying, if you do what you love, you'll never work another day in your life. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Obviously, no matter what you do, there will be challenges, there will be specific things that you don't really like to do. But for the most part, I do believe that if you are following your passion, you will feel happy most of the time. Right. And so that's what I wanted to manifest, a career that offered me that fulfillment, but also offered me freedom, time freedom, especially as a mom. I wanted the flexibility. And I also wanted to be able to get back what I put out. I think that in corporate, you can do amazing work, you can give it your all, but there's always going to be a cap. But in entrepreneurship, it's in relation to the value that you offer. You know, how many people are you helping? How much value are you offering to the world? And to me, that is very attractive. And so that was what I was trying to manifest. And I feel like I'm living that now. And I feel so, so grateful. I don't take it for granted. Even the days when I'm not feeling the best, or, you know, parts of business that is not the most exciting, it's all worth it. It's all worth it because I I know I'm working towards my vision, and I think that it's such a blessing to be able to work towards that and to live that. And I think earlier you were talking about enjoying the journey, right? Not just the destination. I feel like that's something that I always wanted, to be able to wake up and feel excited and to really enjoy what I'm creating on a day-to-day basis. And I feel very grateful that I have that now.
Love that. And could we also talk about not just the amazing work you're doing with Manifestment, but also Female for Tech, your nonprofit? Like, could you talk a little bit about how did that start? And what inspired that cause, and maybe other causes that you're inspired to do with all the work you're pursuing?
Yeah, so Female for Tech was inspired by my time at Facebook. As I mentioned before, or wait, actually I don't think that we talked about that. Okay, let me rephrase that so you can edit that out. So Female for Tech was inspired by my time at Facebook. So when I transitioned from the consulting industry to the tech industry, I was aware of the gender gap, but it wasn't until I worked in tech, until I was a recruiter in tech, that I realized how important and critical it is to solve for this and to close that gap. I think just being part of the recruiting process, part of the hiring process, working with the teams, having insight into what they're working on and talking to the people, you just have a different perspective and it hits you differently. And when it comes to closing the gender gap, I think it's a multi prong solution. It's not just what we do or what we don't do during recruiting, during hiring. It's also, how do we support the women who are in tech? Because there are so many women who leave tech because they don't feel supported, they don't feel seen, they don't feel like their value or their ideas are valued. Right. So that's a whole nother thing. But also beyond those aspects, it's how do we build the top of funnel? How can we hire more women if there aren't enough women in the candidate pool, right? And so I think for me, it was, well, what can we do to increase the number of women in the candidate pool? We got to support the students. We have to support the women who are currently pursuing a degree and want to work in tech. How do we get younger girls interested in tech at an early age? I think that exposure is so key so that they can explore and see if this is something that they're interested in. Is this a career that would be fulfilling to them? And so with Female for Tech, that's what we do. We support students. And over the last several years, we've been more primarily focused on scholarships, providing financial assistance to students in high school and in college. So seniors who are going off to college and then students currently in college. And the reason why I wanted to do scholarships is it was inspired based on my own experience. I was very fortunate to receive a scholarship to go to college from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I've always been so in awe that strangers who don't know you are willing to donate money to a foundation to help, to help you. And so that really stuck with me. And so when I decided to start my nonprofit, it was, well, how do I want to help? In what way? I felt very inspired to go that route and to pay it forward because I do think it makes such a big difference. A lot of people struggle financially and they have these aspirations and they have these goals, but they just need a little help. So that is a little bit about Female for Tech. We awarded 5 scholarships last year. This year, I will say we've seen a significant decrease in donations because most of our donors are in tech. And as you know, with all the layoffs, it's been difficult, but I'm still very hopeful that we'll be able to award scholarships this year. And so if you're listening, if you're looking for a 501c3 to donate to, check us out at femalefortech.org. Your donation is tax deductible. You can learn more about the nonprofit on the website. But yeah, that's a little bit about the organization and why I started it and why specifically we focus on financial assistance.
I love that. I love that you did that because I feel like a lot of times you're like, how do I create something that's impactful and meaningful? And we stop there. It's like, well, it seems a little far-fetched. Like, start somewhere, right? And make it happen and come to people and ask them questions, ask them for help. Like, I want to do this. And what I wanted to say also, if it's a little off topic, I went back to get my MBA during my time at Meta. And then during that time, I decided I'm going to go get my Master of Science because there was just a path there. And I remember distinctly how I thought that I was too late. Like, it's too late for me to get into tech. Like, I was working at Meta, but not in a technical field. And I was like, well, that's it. It's too late. I can't learn something new. I had a very different conception of what it even meant to be in tech and what that would take. And so if you're listening to this, check this program out. But if you're also an adult a little bit later in your life, you're like, hey, I don't know, is it too late? I'm like, it's not. Like, I think that's the process of also like having reflection and going through challenges, and you learn like you can do a lot more. And if you have limiting beliefs, like challenge those. And that could be one of those things where you go back in tech and discover like you can do that. You can find programs. There's so many amazing opportunities and organizations that want to support you. So I appreciate you being part of that.
Absolutely. And I'm so happy that you shared your story because part of overcoming and eliminating a limiting belief or a disempowering belief is to see other people, is to seek out evidence. If it's not in your life, it's someone you know, or, maybe it's, even if it's not someone you know personally, if they can do it, you can do it too. If they were able to do something, it simply is proof that it's possible for you too. Sometimes we look at other people's stories and we feel like, well, they have this or they have that, or, they're lucky. Or sometimes, people can feel jealous, but really what you see in other people's lives is just inspiration of what's possible for you too. So thank you for sharing your story. It's so inspiring.
I feel like I promise I didn't pay Jennifer to say this, but this aligns perfectly with the purpose of this podcast because my vision for this podcast was that I've always felt a little bit crazy, and maybe it's common to people that work at Meta, Facebook, or whatnot. But I felt like I'm always trying to learn and do something, and maybe I don't have a network where I see people normalize that. And I was like, I don't even want to share what I'm doing sometimes because I don't want people to feel bad or jealous or whatnot. But I realized that when I did share my example, people would be like, oh, you know what? I actually want to do that too. And then they come back like, oh, you know what? I actually decided to go and learn that skill, or I'm going to go take a course. And I realized the value, to your point, of sharing our examples. And I wanted this podcast to, again, show people on their unique path because that's important to me. It's not like everybody else is struggling, learning, and pursuing something that ignites their passion, because that's what makes you feel alive. that's the real thing. Like, I feel like too often we see the success and people where they're at right now, and we don't even want to start because that's the messy part we typically don't share. And so I want
Yep.
to challenge that. Like, there is a messy part, there is a journey, but you can get through it because look at all these other people. Look at Jennifer. Look what she can accomplish, and she started somewhere too.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe
Mm.
you have a similar experience, but I found I had no clue what I was going to do as an entrepreneur. I'm still figuring out what I want to do when I grow up. But I found that when
Love that.
when I went to like LinkedIn, for example, just that it happened to the space I was at, and I was like, I'm going to do this. I have this idea of how I want to help, and I started sharing that with you and others. The response was amazing. And what I mean by that, not like everybody I connected was like, that's great, you're going to be amazing. But when I did connect with some people, there were some connections, people around the world and people I could learn from, people who
Mm-hmm.
were entrepreneurs, people who had ideas and wanted to build me up. And that was amazing because for years before that, I wanted to have the network that inspires me, that supports me. And I was like, how do I find it? Like, where is that in the world? And then you start your journey, even though it's not fully baked, you put it on the world and amazing things happen. Has that happened to you?
Yes, yes. I think a lot of times it's just a matter of reaching out. And I'm going to share with you a story that transpired the last couple of days. But just around what you said, collaboration over competition. I saw that quote. I think it was on the Create and Cultivate Instagram. But yeah, collaboration over competition. It's so important. Like this, us right now on this podcast, this is a collaboration and it's so amazing. And so thank you for inviting me on. And I'm excited to have you on my podcast one day too, if you're willing. Um, but yes, when I started my entrepreneurial journey, it was a little bit lonely, I will say, trying to find a network or find my people or just find other people who are also on this path. And so one of the things that I did was I invested in different coaching programs. And you don't have to invest. You can certainly leverage LinkedIn and find people who are willing to mentor you. I was very fortunate to um, be in a position where I could invest some money to be part of a program. I think that when you invest in coaching, especially if it's a group coaching program, you kind of have that instant built in community. And so I've made some friends that way. And it really does make a difference when you are surrounded by like-minded individuals, when you're around people who can lift you up, support you, help you in some way. It's really nice. It is incredibly, it makes a big difference. I'll say that. And not only that, you're able to get further faster. I think that you're able to bounce ideas off of people. If you're working with a coach, they can show you the way to get there. They've been there, so they can help you prevent mistakes, and it can just really expedite things for you. I think outside of that, not being afraid to reach out, not being afraid to not hear back from someone, or if they say no. It's really interesting because when I was a recruiter, I never felt that fear of rejection. If a candidate wasn't interested, it's totally cool, not a big deal, right? But then when you're an entrepreneur, you do get a little shy reaching out. You it, it it can feel a little intimidating sometimes, but it's just having that same perspective of not everyone's going to say yes, and that is okay. Probably not a good match anyway. But the people who do say yes, or the people that you connect to, are the people that you're meant to work with. And so a really quick example, the other day on my story, I let me see if the book is here. Okay, I don't have the book right here, but there's a new book I'm reading. It's called My Father Knew the Secret. It's by Brian Proctor. And his father, Bob Proctor, passed away. Bob is someone that's really special to me because I learned so much from him about spirituality, about the subconscious mind, about limiting beliefs, and just about manifesting and creating the life that you want. And so he passed away, and Brian released this book, and I was so excited to read it. And I posted on my Instagram story, I'm manifesting an interview with Brian Proctor on my podcast. I literally posted this last week. I think it was last week. And I sent him a message on Instagram because he had a story. He had, I think it was like a book signing. And Anya, what was so interesting is I saw the background. It was water, a lot of greenery. And I'm like, does he live in Washington? That looks like Washington to me, right? So, anyway, I reached out to him. I replied to his story and I basically just told him that, if he has another book signing, I would love to go. And he graciously offered to sign me a book. If whenever you're in the area, like I'm happy to make that happen. And I was so blown away. I was so uh yeah, I was just very blown away that that happened. And come to find out, yeah, they live in Washington. Sorry, I kind of missed that part when I was telling the story, but they live here in Washington. I think they live an hour away from where I'm at. And so the power of law of attraction, put it out there, and you never know. You never know how things will unfold. And so, anyway, that is an example of having the courage to reach out to people. Yeah, I thought that he wasn't going to respond, but he did. And you never know. You just never know unless you try. And if he didn't, if he had not responded, I would have been okay. It's not a big deal, right? And so, yeah, be fearless, reach out. You never know.
I love it. And I think part of you had a little intuition. I'm trying
Yeah,
to
a
become
little
better
bit.
with my
Yeah.
intuition. Like that, you did it, right? You had some intuition, like, why not? And what I think is the more you try and you embrace a little bit of that crazy intuition, even if it doesn't happen, each time it becomes easier. It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
what is the craziest thing I can do right now? And the worst case, they don't reply or say no. And you're like, I'll take my chances.
Yeah, exactly. It's the the example I shared earlier of, okay, what is the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? Okay, well, the best case scenario is that they respond. So is it worth it to just try? Is the best case scenario, is it so much better? Does it outweigh the worst case scenario? Go for it.
Absolutely. Jennifer, I feel like the time flew by and I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, we were talking for all this time, but it felt so short.
I
Was there
know.
anything?
Wow.
I know, it's been awesome, right? But I feel like we dove into a lot of really important subjects, but
Hmm.
was there anything that I missed that you want to share before we wrap up with some final questions?
Yeah, I think we should maybe touch on leaving corporate because I know a lot of people who want to start their own business. They know they're not happy in their current job, but they have fear that's holding them back. And so I would love to share a little bit about my story of what led to my resignation, and then also just how I overcame the fear of uncertainty, the fear of failure, the fear of starting over. Do you want to dive into that?
I would love to. Let's do it.
Okay. So, leaving corporate, it wasn't one instance or like one moment. It was the feeling of it was the feeling of dissatisfaction that built up over time. And so I want to share just a couple of moments in my career. I call them the dominoes. So the first domino was when I was in consulting. One year I worked so hard and sacrificed so many weekends and just that being in that hustler mode, grinding and working all hours of the day. I remember performance review, the performance review cycle rolled around and I got significantly above, which was the highest rating that you can get. And I was so excited. I'm like, awesome, right? But you have to wait to talk to your manager to know what your new compensation would be and all of that. So I go into this meeting. I'm super excited. I feel really proud of myself because, again, I had put in a lot of time and work. I find out that my percentage increase to my pay is 4%. And I was like, oh, kind of disappointed because, yeah, because of, again, my expectations. I thought that it was going to be a lot more than that given the rating. And so I had an honest conversation with my manager and I said, I'm just going to be honest. I am a little bit surprised given the fact that I received the highest rating possible. And she told me that actually I received the highest uh, increase of everyone on my team. And I was like, oh, well then. I think that was the first moment where I thought to myself, you know what? If I put the same energy, passion, effort into my own thing, something that I'm really passionate about, how far could I go? So that was like the first domino. That was the first time. Fast forward to Facebook. So I was in the consulting industry for a long time. And I thought, you know what, maybe I just need a new environment. Maybe I just need to go to a new company and maybe I will feel more excited, more fulfilled if I'm doing something new, if I'm in a different industry. That's what I thought. So I did that. I also knew that by switching companies, I could see an increase in my pay. It would be a bigger bump. And so I went to Facebook, and I will say that I was so in awe and mind blown by all the benefits, free breakfast, lunch, and dinner, shuttle to and from work. It was amazing. And I really loved my coworkers. Like the PhD was amazing. I had a great manager. I felt like it was a really awesome job. But eventually that excitement kind of wore off. And I had this internal conflict too, because I'm like, I'm getting paid really well. I have all these benefits. I enjoy the people that I work with. Yet at the same time, I still feel like this isn't what I really want to do. It's not something I'm super passionate about. That was another big moment in my career because I thought, oh, well, if I just make more money, I'll be happy. But that was the first uh, moment where I said, well, I'm making good money, but not fully satisfied. But I wasn't ready to leave yet. And I'm sharing this because I feel like people feel like they have to leave right away. Sometimes it can take, at least for me, it took many, many years until I actually built up enough courage to leave. And so don't feel pressured to, put in your resignation right now. But yeah, anyway, so after Facebook, I started at Apple. And this was the first time that I was making multiple six figures. And I felt so grateful because I was doing the same work. It wasn't harder or anything, but I was getting paid even more than I was at Facebook. And the whole golden handcuffs. I'm like, wow, this is really generous pay for what I'm doing. But again, that little voice, you know, are you really happy? Is this what you really want to do? And it just got to a point where that feeling of dissatisfaction, I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so I said, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna leave. And I put in my resignation and I haven't looked back. And you know what? I've never been happier. I will always be grateful for all the companies I worked at. I'm grateful for all the opportunities because I was able to develop so many meaningful relationships like ours. I was able to develop the skills I needed to be a successful entrepreneur. So I will always be grateful, but I will say that I've never been happier. And so that is a little bit about my journey and my story. And I would say that it was probably the span of 6 years or something like that. I mean, it wasn't, I had something happen and I left. It was this growing feeling and my intuition getting louder and louder over time.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. That's so important. And I hope the people listening to this, especially people who, like in tech, have gotten affected by layoffs and just have hope, even if you are not ready to do something of
Mm-hmm.
your own, even if you're like, yep, I'm going to go back and find a job. But maybe you have that inkling, maybe that seed of, I want to do more. I could do more. There's a little more purpose. Just, I hope this inspired you to say, hey, it could it could take time, but this is preparing me for that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I will find my guidance
Stepping stones.
and really cool things can happen along the way. And I will find fulfillment that, aligns with my purpose beyond
Yeah,
just the corporate world.
absolutely. And there are going to be fears. Like I said, I had to overcome the fear of uncertainty and failure, the fear of starting over, feeling like I am letting go of all the years of experience that I worked so hard to. I guess the better way to put it is feeling like I had worked so hard to get to where I was that I was giving that up pretty much. And so to share with the listeners a couple of things that really helped me. So in terms of overcoming the fear of failure, I took out a piece of paper. I did a couple of exercises, so I'll share it with you guys. One was I wrote down all of the things that I was afraid of, like the worst case scenarios, and I wrote out what I would do in that situation. for example, well, what if I deplete my savings? What if I don't make income? What if it takes a lot longer for me to build my business? And I told myself that I would go get a part-time job. I could go get a low stress job to help bring in income for a short period of time if it got to that point, because I'm so passionate about my vision that I'm willing to do that, And so facing your fears and finding a solution of what you would do can really ease your mind and help you to see that, oh, that's not a big deal. Everything can be solved, And so doing that exercise really helped me. I think the other thing was just reminding myself that corporate is always going to be there. Like, it's not going anywhere. So if this doesn't work out, worst case scenario, I can always go and find another recruiting job. That also helped ease some of my fears. And then the other exercise that I did is a consequences exercise. So on a piece of paper, you can write down all the potential consequences of leaving your job. Okay, it's going to take me a long time to build my business. The potential consequences, I don't know, Anya, can you help provide some potential consequences that you thought of when you left
Oh,
corporate?
for sure. I'd fail and feel miserable about it, right? That the self-doubt would actualize. My family would get affected by it. We lose the house, all the fun stuff, if that's helpful.
Okay. And so going back to the previous exercise, it was, well, what could I do in those situations? So your mind is already a little bit more at ease when it comes to those consequences, because you know that there's something that you can do. There's always some sort of workaround. There's always something that can help alleviate some of those potential risks, right? And so doing that exercise. But then the second part to this consequences exercise is, well, what are all of the consequences of staying in your job? And so you write down, well, I'm going to have to feel dread every day, or, only live for the weekends, or, this is different for everybody, but it could be feeling like you're not living up to your fullest potential, living with regret when you're older, when you're 70 or 80, all the what ifs. Well, what if I did do it? Right. So writing down all the consequences of you staying in one spot or staying and not changing. And when you look at both, you realize that the consequences of staying is often a lot harder to live with. And there are less solutions for these consequences than the consequences on this other piece of paper that we did, or the list of the potential consequences of leaving, right? And so this exercise is really helpful, because a lot of times we just focus on the consequences of leaving, but we don't stop to think of the consequences on the other side. And you need to really weigh both. And when you do that, you realize that, staying in one place is often riskier than taking the risk. And so
I
that
think,
helped me a lot.
yeah, and they've got to add to that, I think, case in point, the layoffs, right? You feel like if you're
Yes,
if you're
absolutely.
if you're here at a tech place, like you're good, you're golden, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
no risk there, but there is. And the
Yeah.
fact is that you have to keep learning and evolving, and ideally even doing something of your own to actually become more safe, because you're not going to fire yourself, hopefully. Right. So,
Yeah.
and I think another thing that I saw through this endeavor, even if it whatever happens, is that I will grow so much from it. I think you can
Mm-hmm.
relate to, like, even being eight personalities in the corporate, you learn a lot, but when you're
Mm-hmm.
running your own business, you are learning like in a crazy mode, because you're learning so much all the time, all the connections. And I
Wearing all
think
the
that's
hats. Yeah.
all the hats, absolutely. And I also believe in the power of connection, like not this better, good or bad, but the people you meet, the relationships you get are probably nothing like you would have in the corporate world for the most part, right? Like the entrepreneurs, the thought leaders, people who are excited about what you have to offer to the world, like they come into your world because you're also doing that,
Yes.
right? And I think even if you were like, I'm going to go back to a job, those experiences are going to make you so much bigger, let's say, like your
Yeah.
potential bigger, because you were bold enough to do them.
Yeah. And I think that just really leads to the point about the meaning of failure, the meaning that we give to failure. So a lot of times people feel like failure is a destination, it means something about you, but to your point, it's just about learning. You're just learning. It's just part of the process. I love this proverb that my mom taught me as a young child. It's "Thất bại là mẹ của thành công," and it translates to, it's a Vietnamese proverb, and it translates to, failure is the mother of success. And I think that it's such a beautiful reframe because we do learn so much when we quote unquote fail. I also love the quote, failure is feedback, fail forward. Like it just reminds you to not think of failure as like this different path. I once saw this image on LinkedIn where, you know, it's this fork in the road and you think that one is failure and one is success, but really failure is just part on the same path as success. And it's what helps you to learn and helps you grow. And I also feel like once you accomplish your goal, it is such a sweeter celebration, I would say, because you know that you overcame a lot and you persevered to get there. And it's, to me, I feel like goals, it's not so much what you get, but it's like who you become. And you become a stronger person, a more confident person, a more resilient person, all these things. But it's only through those trials and tribulations. It's only through those failures and those challenging moments. I mean, what fun would it be if it was just a smooth path and, you know, you just accomplish your goal with no sort of challenge? I don't think that there's any reward in that. So yeah, I think it's definitely seeing failure on a different light, seeing it through a different lens can help lessen that fear.
Absolutely. And again, I didn't pay attention for to say this, but I'm writing my first book, which who knows what will happen if it, but I'm calling it Rebel Learning, the journey from self-doubt to unfailing trust in yourself.
I love
Because
that.
thank you,
I
thank you.
love that for you.
Thank you. Yeah, the reason I wanted to write, because again, my experience is, but I, to your point, don't believe you can really fail,
Mm-hmm.
because to me that's a view of like that's an end point and we're on a journey. And
Mm-hmm.
failure, like I truly believe that I can learn and adapt and keep going, and as long as you keep doing that, you can't really fail. Like sure,
Right.
it may not be exactly how you pictured it, the path will change and the process will change, but I don't believe in failure as a stopping point anymore, and I'm trying to share that. So thank you for bringing that up. Well,
I'm
I
so
definitely resonate with
excited
that.
for you. That's amazing.
I'll always be trying something new, right?
I can absolutely see you as an author. I'm here for it and I'm so excited to support
Oh,
you.
let's do amazing stuff together. If I can just wrap up one thing, like you mentioned the competition thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's such a limiting belief, and I just want to interject it here. I was thinking about it when you mentioned it, because there are billions of people in this world. And
Yeah.
even if like Jennifer and I have similar thoughts and messages that hopefully help you grow, I'm sure that our style is very different.
Yeah.
So
Very.
there's
Yeah.
no point in competing. If you see, and my dogs are excited about this too, but there's no point in competing because you are going to have your unique style. There are billions of people in the world who will resonate with your style differently. So if you're also holding yourself back because you're like, well, look at Jennifer, she already has her ish together. She's doing great. She's already covering the subject that maybe I want to explore. That doesn't matter,
It
because
doesn't.
you can learn and create your own thing. And there's going to be an audience that distinctly likes what you do and not what somebody else's do. So don't let that limit you and don't compete.
It is such a limiting belief for sure. And I know that when I wanted to get into the personal development space, I thought of all of these amazing experts. You know, you have the Jay Shetty, the Tony Robbins, the Mel Robbins, all these people. And I'm thinking, how am I going to stand out? Right. But the truth is this: no matter how amazing Tony Robbins is, for example, is it feasible for him to help every single person in this world? We need to come together. You know what I mean? We need to have more people who can share this message. And so it's not about competition. It's just, again, reframing it in your mind that um that it's not about who can be the best or who can help the most people. No matter how good someone is, they just don't, they're not able to help every single soul on this planet. And so your message is important, your message is needed. Um, and I think so there's this, you don't have to include this in the podcast, but I want to share it with you. There's this brand, it's a candle brand, and candles are very saturated. It's a very saturated market. You can find candles everywhere. And there was this brand that came out where they focus on Asian inspired scents from your childhood, basically.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and I thought that that is so unique. So there's always like a unique take that you can take on something. Just because something's been done or is being done doesn't mean that you can't do it differently. You can put your own spin on it. And so I think definitely that helped me a lot, to not feel afraid of like a quote unquote saturated market. And I think the other thing too is that no one has your exact same story. No one communicates like you. No one has the exact same experiences as you. And what you offer is going to resonate with a very specific person. And so you have to really be rooted in that and remind yourself of that, because it can be very, there can be times where it's very challenging, because in the world of business, it is about like competition, right? It is about like differentiating yourself. But I think just having a more empowering perspective around that can be helpful. But yeah, you can include whatever you want about this, but it's really important. I hope that you do, because it's what holds a lot of people back, because they feel like it's already being done, or they don't feel like there's space for them, but there's space for everyone.
I agree. Again, billions of people, the money is out there in the world. And I think honestly, the limiting belief came to me being in the corporate world and thinking it's about the next level, the people around me. But then you get out, or even if you try
Mm-hmm.
something as a side hustle, you see that there's a lot more resource, a lot more potential. And I'm not going to cut any of this. This is awesome. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I am looking at the time. Was there anything else that we missed before I wrap up with
Um,
our final question?
I think the only other thing that I wanted to share in regards to the fear of failure, for me, it helped to think of my past failures and realize that, hey, I'm still here. It didn't break me. Failure doesn't break you. It actually makes you who you are. It makes you stronger, like we talked about. It also helps you to be a more humble person. It helps you to be a more resilient person, all of those things. But a couple of examples in my life. So I actually didn't get the job at Facebook the first try. I actually lost out on that position to Nate.
Shout out to Nate.
Shout out to Nate. Made total sense. He is a way better recruiter than I could ever be. But yeah, I had to interview twice. I think a total of 10 interviews before I landed my job. If I was so fixated on that quote unquote failure of not getting it the first time, I wouldn't have tried the second time. And so you really have to also trust the timing of your life as well. And I think that I think it all worked out for me, because the role that I ended up getting at Facebook was so much more aligned with my level of experience and what I wanted to do. So it all is always everything is always working out for you. The other example that I wanted to share is pageantry. So I've lost more pageants than I've won, but people like to talk about the highlights. They don't really share your whole story and all of the bumps in the road. But yeah, I've lost more pageants than I've won. And so again, I could focus on the feeling of failure and making it mean something, but instead I focused on, well, what did I learn from that? How could I be better? Also trusting that it has nothing to do with me. It was someone else's time, so let's celebrate that person, and my time will come in the future. And if it's not in pageantry, it's in something else. So really having uh, being open to the different possibilities. You might think you know what you want, but I think that the universe always knows better. I always remind myself of, and this is kind of silly, but like back to when I was like 16 or 15 and I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. I thought I knew the type of relationship I wanted and all these things. We think we know, but we don't always. We don't always know. And so having that trust and faith is very helpful too.
Agreed. I think back and I am grateful to the universe for things that did not work out that I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted, right?
Yeah.
And all the things that unexpectedly did work out in the best way possible, from relationships to work
Mm-hmm.
to this journey. Like if I got my way exactly how I wanted it, I would be way more miserable.
An affirmation that I really love is, I'm so grateful for all that is and all there isn't. And I think, yeah, to your point, if everything had worked out the way we planned, would we really be better off?
No, I know
Yeah.
for me, certainly I would not be there. But I love the quotes, and I feel like everybody listening, because yes, we need to go check out your podcast and your resource, because I love the quotes that we just had on this podcast.
Walking quote machine.
Very accurate, very accurate. Well, my friend, I feel like we talked about so many topics, and I have loved seeing you grow in your work. I'm excited for people to hear
Thank
about your
you.
story. And I love that you also have that manifestation and business side to your whole thing, because I think it's very much more like there's a spiritual and an action element that combines to be very powerful in your life or whatever you decide to do with this knowledge. So thank you for sharing that. And also, can you touch about where can people find you? So that I'm going to obviously share it in the description, but where would people reach out to you and connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on LinkedIn. On Instagram, my handle is at hello Jennifer Lay. So that's hello Jennifer, and last name is spelled L-E. And then my podcast is the Manifestment Podcast, which is available on Apple and Spotify as well as Google. And you can also check out manifestment.com. That's manifesment.com.
I'm excited. I'm excited for everybody listening to check you out. Please
Thank you.
share with us, like also on Threads. I think you're on there now, which
Mm-hmm.
is a new platform.
I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm
Yes, we're all threading it. We're all threading it. But share with us on all the platforms. What stood out to you? What did you learn? Any questions that you have for Jennifer, I'll be happy to share and comment on there together. So share with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. And Jennifer, when you're ready, I have 3 final questions.
Oh, okay. I'm ready.
Okay. So just whatever first comes to mind. And the last question, I just want to give context that it's in a positive context, just
Okay.
it gets confusing.
Got it.
Okay. So ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Success to me is?
Success to me means waking up, feeling excited about life, giving back to your community, and enjoying life with your loved ones.
What motivates me the most is?
My family and being able to make an impact, a lasting impact.
That's beautiful. Okay, last one. Again, in the positive context, going off track is?
Going off track is living life on your own terms and doing what makes you happy.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I enjoy learning from you. When I see you, I'm always just excited about the information you share and your genuine and caring style. And I'm excited about all the people who get to learn from you and get to enrich their life through your knowledge. So thank you for sharing a little bit of that in this episode.
Thank you so much, Anya. It was such an amazing conversation. I had a really good time. And again, honored to be a guest on your podcast.
Such a blast. And everybody listening, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to having you on the next episode of Right Off Track. Until next time.